Singapore has just announced major updates to its work permit rules for 2026, including a higher age limit, longer stay opportunities, and updated eligibility rules for foreign workers. In this video, I'll break everything down in simple terms and explain what this means for people planning to work in Singapore. Let's start from the beginning and really understand what's going on. Singapore is one of the strongest economies in Asia and one of the top destinations people consider when looking for international work opportunities. Why? Because the country is known for strong economy, high safety levels, better infrastructure, stable currency, and a very organized working system. Over the years, thousands of foreign workers from different countries have moved to Singapore to work in sectors like construction, hospitality, manufacturing, logistics, marine industry, services. But recently, Singapore started facing a challenge. The country has been dealing with labor shortages, an aging workforce, and increasing demand for experienced workers in important industries. So instead of constantly replacing workers every few years, Singapore has decided to make changes that allow employers to keep experienced foreign workers longer, reduce workforce shortages, and improve stability in key sectors. That is why the government announced major updates to the Singapore work permit system. And honestly, these updates are a very big deal for people planning to work abroad. Now let's simplify what these changes are really about. The government is mainly focusing on three major areas. White right pointing backhand index, higher age limits. White right pointing backhand index, longer stay opportunities. White right pointing backhand index, updated eligibility rules. And all of these changes are designed to make the system more flexible for both employers and foreign workers. Before these changes, many foreign workers faced limitations like strict age caps, limited number of years they could stay, constant uncertainty about renewals. Imagine building your life and career somewhere, then being forced to leave because of an age rule or time limit. That was the reality for many workers before. But now, Singapore is gradually changing that approach. Another important thing to understand is this. Singapore is not opening its doors carelessly. The country is still very selective. They are simply adjusting their policies to keep workers who are skilled, experienced, and needed in important industries. So this is not some open visa for everybody situation. The system is still structured and employer-based. And this is why many people around the world are paying attention to these updates. Because compared to before, workers may now stay longer, older workers may still qualify, and some industries may have more opportunities than before. Now, if you're someone thinking, can this help me? Can Nigerians apply? What kind of jobs are available? Don't worry. We'll break all of that down step by step in this video. But one thing I need you to understand early is this. A lot of misleading information is already spreading online. Some people are making it sound like Singapore has opened free immigration, anybody can just move, or no requirements exist anymore. That is not true. And on this channel, I always want us to focus on real opportunities, real updates, and accurate information. Because when it comes to relocation, misinformation can cost people money, time, and opportunities. So in this video, I'm going to explain what actually changed, who these changes affect, and what foreign workers should realistically expect moving forward. Now let's talk about one of the biggest updates everyone is discussing. White right pointing backhand index, the new age limit changes. This is honestly one of the most important updates Singapore has introduced for foreign workers in a long time. Because previously, age restrictions were a major challenge for many people. Before these changes, many foreign workers had to stop working in Singapore once they reached certain age limits. This meant that even if they were experienced, still healthy, still productive, and their employers wanted to keep them, they could still be affected by the old system. And that created problems for both workers and employers. Think about it. Imagine working in Singapore for years, learning the system, building experience, becoming valuable at your job, then suddenly facing restrictions simply because of age. That's part of what Singapore is now trying to reduce. Under the updated rules, white right pointing backhand index, new work permit applicants can now apply up to age 61 in many cases. And existing work permit holders may continue working up to age 63. depending on eligibility and renewal approval. This is a significant increase compared to older restrictions. Now let's talk about why this matters so much. This change gives experienced workers more time to work, more income opportunities, more career stability, and less pressure about aging out too quickly. For employers, it also means they don't have to keep replacing trained workers constantly. They can retain workers who already understand the job. So this update benefits both sides. And honestly, this reflects a bigger global trend. Many countries are starting to realize that white right pointing backhand index experience matters. Not every worker over a certain age becomes unproductive. In fact, many experienced workers are often more skilled, more disciplined, more efficient. And Singapore seems to be moving in that direction by adjusting these rules. Now, I also want to clear up an important misunderstanding. This does not mean everybody automatically qualifies because of the age increase. Other requirements still matter, including employer approval, sector eligibility, health requirements, valid documentation, permit renewals. So while the age limit has become more flexible, the system is still regulated carefully. Another important thing people should understand is this. The age increase mainly affects work permit categories tied to specific industries. This is different from tourist visas, student visas, permanent residency pathways. So don't confuse them. And if you're someone who previously thought, I might be too old now to still have international work opportunities, these updates may give you new hope, especially if you already have work experience, technical skills, industry experience employers need. But remember, the most important thing is not just your age. It's your skill level, your employability, and whether employers actually need workers in your field. So as exciting as these updates are, you still need to approach the process realistically and strategically. Now let's talk about another major update that has caught the attention of foreign workers around the world. White right pointing backhand index extended stay opportunities in Singapore. And honestly, this may be one of the biggest changes for people who want long-term work stability. Before these updates, many foreign workers in Singapore faced something called a maximum employment period. What does that mean in simple terms? It means there was a limit to how long some workers could stay and continue working in Singapore under certain work permit categories. So even if the worker was doing well, the employer wanted to keep them and everything was going smoothly, there could still come a point where the worker had to leave because they had reached the allowed limit. Now imagine the stress that creates. You spend years working hard, building experience, adjusting to life in Singapore, sending money home, supporting your family. Then suddenly, you're forced to think about leaving because your permitted work duration is ending. That uncertainty affected many workers. And employers also struggled because they kept losing trained staff. They had to spend time and money hiring new workers. Productivity could be affected. This is part of the reason Singapore introduced these changes. The government realized that keeping experienced workers longer can actually help businesses, industries, and the economy overall. So under the updated rules, Singapore has started removing maximum employment period limits for many work permit holders in certain sectors. Now let's explain what that really means. Instead of workers being automatically restricted by a strict number of years, many workers may now continue working for much longer as long as their employer still wants them, their permits continue to be renewed, and they remain eligible under immigration rules. This is a very important shift. And honestly, this gives workers something many people value deeply. White right pointing backhand index stability. Because now workers can think more long-term. Instead of constantly worrying, how many years do I have left? Will I soon be forced to leave? They may now have more confidence to build savings, gain more experience, plan their future better. Now, let me clarify something important. This does not mean white right pointing backhand index you automatically get permanent residence. A work permit is still temporary, employer linked, and subject to renewals and immigration rules. So even though the stay period may be extended, workers still need valid employment, employer sponsorship, compliance with Singapore laws. Another important thing to understand is this. Singapore is not extending stay opportunities randomly. The country is focusing on industries where workers are genuinely needed. This includes areas like construction, manufacturing, marine industries, process sectors, services, because these sectors rely heavily on experienced manpower. And from Singapore's perspective, keeping experienced workers longer helps reduce labor shortages, frequent retraining, and operational disruptions. So these changes are not just about immigration. They are also about economic planning. Now, for many people watching this video, this update may create hope, especially for workers who want international work experience, want longer earning opportunities abroad, or want more stability than before. But again, it's important to stay realistic. Longer stay opportunities do not remove the need for proper documentation, good work records, legal employment status. So people should still approach the process carefully and professionally. Now let's move into another very important part of these changes. White right pointing backhand index updated eligibility rules. Because whenever immigration systems change, one of the biggest questions people ask is, white right pointing backhand index, who actually qualifies? Let's break that down simply. First, Singapore work permits are mainly designed for workers in specific sectors where labor is needed. This includes industries like construction, manufacturing, marine, shipyard, process industries, service sectors. These are sectors where Singapore depends heavily on foreign manpower. Now, under the updated system, Singapore is making adjustments to approved occupations, source countries, and worker eligibility requirements in some sectors. This is part of the country's effort to balance economic growth, labor demand, and workforce planning. One thing people need to understand clearly is this. White right pointing backhand index Singapore work permits are employer-driven. This means you usually cannot simply apply independently and relocate on your own. In most cases, a Singapore employer must hire you first, then the employer applies for the work permit on your behalf. This is very important because many people online misunderstand this process. Now let's talk about the basic eligibility requirements. Generally, workers must be at least 18 years old, meet health and immigration requirements, work in approved sectors, come from approved source countries depending on the industry. And employers themselves must also meet certain conditions, including worker quotas, government levies, compliance rules. Now here's where things get interesting. Singapore has also expanded opportunities in some sectors by adjusting occupation lists, expanding access to more workers, and creating more flexibility for experienced foreign workers. That's one reason these updates are generating so much attention globally. But let me say something very important here. These changes do not mean white right pointing backhand index everybody qualifies automatically. Singapore still maintains a strict immigration structure. The country is selective because they are trying to balance economic needs, workforce demands, housing infrastructure, and local employment concerns. So while opportunities may increase, competition still exists. And this is where many people make mistakes. Some people focus only on, how do I relocate? Instead of asking, white right pointing backhand index, am I qualified for the jobs and sectors Singapore actually needs? Because at the end of the day, your skills matter. If you have experience in areas like construction, technical trades, hospitality, manufacturing, logistics, food services, these updates may benefit you more directly. Now let's also clear up another misunderstanding. A Singapore work permit is not the same as permanent residency, citizenship, or luxury relocation content you see online. This is a work-based immigration system with rules and responsibilities. So people should approach it with realistic expectations, proper planning, and accurate information. And honestly, this is why research matters so much, because immigration misinformation online is becoming a serious problem. Some people exaggerate opportunities, promise unrealistic outcomes, or hide important requirements. And that can mislead people badly. That's why on this channel, I always try to break things down honestly and simply. Because relocation decisions can affect your finances, your career, your future. So it's important to understand both. White right pointing backhand index, the opportunities. White right pointing backhand index and the realities involved. Now, before anybody rushes to pack their bags because of these updates, there are some very important things you need to understand about the Singapore work permit system. And honestly, this section may save a lot of people from confusion and unrealistic expectations. Because one of the biggest problems online right now is that many relocation videos only talk about the exciting parts, but they don't explain the realities properly. So let's talk honestly. White right pointing backhand index. A Singapore work permit is usually tied to an employer. This is one of the most important things to understand. Unlike some immigration systems where you can move first and then look for work, Singapore work permits are generally employer-sponsored. That means a company hires you first, then they apply for your permit. So in most cases, white right pointing backhand index, you cannot just wake up and independently apply for a work permit without an employer involved. This is very important because many people misunderstand this online. White right pointing backhand index. Your ability to stay depends on your employment. Since the permit is linked to your employer, your legal stay in Singapore is also connected to your job status. If your permit expires, your employment ends, or renewals are not approved, your immigration situation can be affected. So this is not a completely free immigration system. It is still structured around employment. White right pointing backhand index. A work permit is different from permanent residency. A lot of people confuse these things. Let's simplify it. A work permit allows you to live in Singapore temporarily for work, earn income, legally work in approved sectors. But it does not automatically make you a permanent resident or a Singapore citizen. Those are completely different immigration categories with separate requirements. White right pointing backhand index. Family sponsorship may be limited. This is another important area people need to understand properly. Unlike some higher-level employment passes, standard work permit holders generally do not automatically qualify to bring family members under dependent passes. This depends heavily on your permit category, your income level, and the type of pass you hold. So before making relocation plans involving family, it's very important to research the exact pass type and rules carefully. White right pointing backhand index. Singapore immigration rules are strict. Singapore is known globally for being organized, structured, and strict with regulations. This includes immigration laws. So workers are expected to follow the rules carefully, maintain valid documents, respect employment conditions. Violating immigration rules can create serious consequences. White right pointing backhand index. Avoid fake promises and scams. Unfortunately, whenever immigration updates happen, scammers quickly appear online. You'll see people promising guaranteed jobs, instant relocation, no documents needed, 100% approval. Please be careful. Legitimate immigration processes do not work that way. Always verify information, use official government sources, and avoid rushing into payments blindly. White right pointing backhand index. Relocation is bigger than just getting a visa. This is something many people don't think about enough. Moving abroad is not just about getting approved or entering another country. You also need to think about cost of living, work conditions, accommodation, cultural adjustment, financial planning. Because relocation is a life decision, not just a travel decision. Now let's talk about why these updates are actually important. Because on the surface, some people may just see white right pointing backhand index. Oh, they increased the age limit. But the impact goes much deeper than that. These changes reflect something happening globally. Many countries are now competing for skilled and experienced workers. Why? Because industries around the world are facing labor shortages, aging populations, and workforce gaps. And Singapore is one of the countries adjusting its policies to respond to that reality. White right pointing backhand index. More stability for workers. One major impact of these updates is stability. Before, many workers constantly worried about age restrictions, maximum stay periods, uncertainty about long-term employment. But now, with higher age limits, longer stay possibilities, workers may feel more secure about their future opportunities. White right pointing backhand index. Better workforce retention for employers. These changes also help employers. Think about it. Training workers takes time, money, experience. So when experienced workers are forced to leave too early, companies lose valuable manpower. By allowing employers to retain workers longer, productivity improves, businesses become more stable, industries function more efficiently. White right pointing backhand index, more opportunities for experienced workers. Another important impact is that older, experienced workers may now have better chances than before. Previously, some people may have thought, white right pointing backhand index, I'm already too old for international work opportunities. But now, Singapore is showing that experience still has value, skilled workers are still needed, and age is not the only factor that matters. White right pointing backhand index, economic growth. From Singapore's perspective, these updates also support economic growth, infrastructure development, industry expansion. Because without enough workers, projects slow down, businesses struggle, services become affected. So immigration policy is also connected to economic planning. White right pointing backhand index, why people around the world are paying attention. These updates are getting global attention because many people are searching for stable work opportunities abroad, better earning potential, long-term career options. And Singapore remains attractive because of its economy, strong currency, safety, organized systems. So naturally, workers are paying close attention to these policy changes. Now the big question. White right pointing backhand index, who are these updates most relevant for? Because not every immigration update applies equally to everybody. These changes are especially important for people with experience in sectors where Singapore has labor demand. This includes areas like construction, manufacturing, logistics, hospitality, food, services, technical trades, marine industries. If you already have skills or experience in these areas, these updates may create better opportunities for you than before. White right pointing backhand index, skilled workers should pay attention. One major thing people need to understand is this. Countries are increasingly prioritizing people with useful skills. So if you have technical experience, industry certifications, hands-on work experience, that can improve your opportunities significantly. White right pointing backhand index, older workers may benefit more than before. This update is also important for experienced workers who previously worried about age restrictions. Now, workers with years of experience may still remain competitive under the updated rules. That's a very important shift. White right pointing backhand index, Nigerians and other Africans need realistic expectations. Now let me say something honestly. A lot of people see relocation content online and assume, white right pointing backhand index, once I decide, I can just move immediately. But international work systems don't work that way. You still need the right skills, employer demand, proper documentation and realistic planning. So people should focus less on hype and more on preparation. White right pointing backhand index, preparation matters more than excitement. The people who usually succeed with international opportunities are often the ones who research properly, build useful skills, stay informed and prepare strategically. Not just people chasing trends online. White right pointing backhand index, final thought. At the end of the day, these Singapore updates represent opportunity. But opportunity only benefits people who understand the system, prepare properly and approach the process realistically. So instead of just getting excited, focus on becoming white right pointing backhand index, skilled. White right pointing backhand index, employable. White right pointing backhand index, and informed. Because those are the people global opportunities usually favor most.